Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. This show is a series that has been coming to you from DCTV since 2015 in a weekly program called the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's program is called What Can We People Do to Help? Thank you to DCTV Carmen Stanley, studio producer, Cruchet Starnes, audio and prompter, and Aliyah Jamari, floor director. Today's segment was pre-recorded and is in response to Joyous Awakening's question. Karen, you're such a sorely needed source of hope in these times, and thank you with all our hearts. How can we people help support you and the efforts of this movement for global monetary justice? The first thing you need to do is to get your bearings. The way to do this is to get together with a few family members and neighbors whom you know and like and plan to remain in contact with. The reason that you do not want to be a loner is because you'll be vulnerable to very sophisticated weaponry that's going to make it hard for you to reason. Some people are more sensitive to this weaponry, which is sometimes called extremely low-frequency electromagnetic weaponry. This weaponry is very real and was mentioned in a review on internet.org. When you operate with a group, the banking cartel's agents will not want to use this weaponry on you. Then you should learn about what's going on so that you can help to make informed decisions. In the beginning, we're going to concentrate on the simple exchange of currencies. Local currencies are the most important building block in the cleanup of the corruption in the international financial system. There is no single model to serve as an example for a community that's issuing its own local currency. It's up to the merchants and providers of services in each community that issues its local currency. The local currency will be a way for the merchants and service providers to barter. On the 2nd of February 2016, I devoted a segment to local currencies. Here are some other resources on local currencies that you can draw upon, and these are going to be in the teleprompter, which will be uploaded on YouTube. All of the members of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund are simultaneously in transition. Their governance is going to become accountable to the local communities. There's a power vacuum as the corrupt elites are exposed as charlatans. The global debt facility, which ultimately finances all of the militaries, is going to ensure that the transition proceeds peacefully and doesn't outpace the ability of the local communities to come to meaningful consensus. Each country is going to proceed at its own pace and in its own way. Decisions are all going to be subject to review in accordance with the local communities. Resources in the global debt facility are ample and will underpin a peaceful transition. The greedy are going to be exposed, just as the elites have been, without rancor and without respite. Secret societies clearly have no place. And on the 30th of December, I said to Natalie, who had asked me a question, "Thank you for asking how to get gold dollars in the global currency reset. As the United States mission to the UN and United States Embassy in Tokyo confirmed yesterday, I speak for the United States on the Board of Governors of the World Bank. The United States has 16% of the vote on the World Bank's Board of Governors. The World Bank's Board of Governors is in charge of the world's gold reserves. The other members of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund agreed that I may speak for them unless they go on record in writing. In the teleprompter for the DCTV segment on the 28th of November, I gave you the procedure for exchanging the world's currencies in the global currency reset. The residents of the United States will mail a notice to the Development Committee on a form that's in the World Bank, on a form to be published, giving the amount of Federal Reserve notes that they propose to exchange, up to $1 million per resident, and the address to which the Development Committee certification for the exchange is to be mailed. In order to exchange Federal Reserve notes for the Treasury dollars, certification will be required. As you saw in the November 28th episode of the series on the Network of Global Corporate Control, that's the title of a 2012 article on the Banking Cartel, which was written by 3 Swiss mathematicians. The Marines attacked the CIA. The Banking Cartel's headquarters are in Switzerland, and so are the CIA's headquarters. The CIA is actually working for the Banking Cartel and not for the United States. The CIA's office in Langley, Virginia, is only a branch office. The rank and file of the U.S. military are loyal to their oath to protect the United States Constitution. The Banking Cartel suspended the United States Constitution, first during the Civil War in 1861 under the Lieber Code, and then under a secret constitution in 1871. Meanwhile, the United States Congress has been bought off entirely by the Banking Cartel. The United States Congress has suspended the Constitution under a state of emergency. The U.S. federal government exists in name only, as the Banking Cartel declared the United States bankrupt in 1933. In my latest live episode on DCTV, I published the statement of James Traficant, who called our attention to the declaration of bankruptcy in the Federal Register, and that's linked in the teleprompter. It's an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act on the 9th of March, 1933, and I'm giving you the citation for that in the teleprompter. And it was declared by President Roosevelt as bankrupt and insolvent. That was in 1933. Where is the gold? As I told you in the last DCTV episode, there's an office in New York in J.P. Morgan Chase. They have a TV set. It's courtesy of Ferdinand Marcos, connected to 34 registered sites in the Philippines. They are looking at the gold in 34 tunnels and the giant snakes mulling around. And you can see in the teleprompter where I've heard that from Wolfgang Struck. Even though I'm able to prove each and every statement that I make, it's taking some time for the global currency reset to begin. I've seen to all the necessary paperwork. Because of the way we all interact with each other and the way we think, that's because our hearts tie us all together, we know that things will eventually work out. It appears that one of the reasons for the delay is that we need to understand exactly how the banking cartel's corruption is holding us back, so that we can be sure to dismantle it. For example, I learned how corrupt the internet is during they're diluting my messages. People need to help me by reaching out to their close friends and relatives in small groups and discussing the global currency reset. That is, the details on how we exchange the currencies. Since local currencies are a main feature in the global currency reset, you all have to see to it that the local businesses also accept local currencies issued in your villages and towns. We all are going to have to rely on individuals to tell other people and to work together locally. The Federal Reserve notes are first going to be exchanged for paper currencies that are printed by the National Mint in Fort Worth. This two-step process is necessary because there are too many Federal Reserve notes, and only some of the Federal Reserve notes will be eligible to be exchanged for golden dollars, as you call them. There is now a limit of 1 million golden dollars per person for the exchange of Federal Reserve notes. If the corruption of the national mint is too deep, we may need to contract out. This is assuming that the currency that's held by the UBS doesn't become available. We are stronger than the banking cartel, but since the banking cartel refuses to admit what's going on, we can't assume that they're ever going to release the dollars held by the global debt facility in UBS. We may need to implement the global currency reset as our coalition builds momentum. We know with 90 to 95% likelihood that this is going to happen. The other nations are also going to be exchanging their paper currencies with golden currencies. It's not dollars. They're going to decide what to call their own currencies, and local currencies as well. How can you prepare for the exchange of the Federal Reserve notes for golden dollars? Another name for them is Aurum. Remain calm and confident. We're learning to work together as we go along. You can see in retrospect how much progress we're making together. You can buy gold and silver as insurance, just in case we don't have a smooth transition. Since we are the ones who hold the world's wealth in the global debt facility, and since we are learning how to work together, and since we're all connected to each other anyway, there's every reason to be confident that we'll have a smooth transition. There's a lot to learn. The transition to a kinder world in the global currency reset is going to take time. Some of the improvements that are just waiting to happen when the suppressed information on health and energy become available may help us accelerate the cleanup of corruption in our money. And this is what the question was from Natalie, which she sent on December 29th. How to get gold dollars. Hi. When the transition from the US dollar to the gold dollar happens, are our US dollars going to be exchanged? How is this going to work? How should we be prepared? And that was sent to me from my contact page on my website. I've told the banking cartel and its various agents that I don't want to be in contact with them. I note that I'm continuing merrily at the center of the Coalition for the Rule of Law, which is much stronger than the banking cartel. The banking cartel's agents, which includes Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, have not deigned to provide any answers to the issues that I've raised about their corrupt bid acting as heads of state, whereas the governments they're just play acting to lead are simply corporations. These men don't represent their people at all. The fact that they're providing no response says it all. I have said that I'm the canary in the coal mine because I'm embedded in the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF and represent the world's people as their proxy until they're able to end the corruption in the world's financial system, using the world's wealth that was deposited by José Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos. Many people are asking me to prove where the world's monetary gold reserves are deposited, and I've told them where to look. There's a much simpler way to prove that the world's wealth is here in the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF for the global currency reset. That is the $2 quadrillion worth of bonds that the Federal Reserve issued in the 1930s in exchange for the elite's gold. José Rizal put these bonds back in the global debt facility as the agent for the elite. These bonds are continuing to accrue interest. I have put a lien on the Fed using these bonds. We, the world's peoples, are winding down the banking cartel with these $2 quadrillion worth of bonds, and we're offsetting this against country debt. And I'm showing you in the teleprompter the email where I nixed Wolfgang Struck's plan to sell this debt. What happened in Rome just before the Dark Ages is that the metal in their coins decreased. We are on the edge of another Dark Ages, and it's necessary to replace the paper currency for currency minted out of the gold in the global debt facility that belongs to all the nations. The network of global corporate control, which has been with us since the previous ice age, is trying to pull the same stunt now with the quantitative easing. The network of global corporate control did not count on the fact that we have predecessors like José Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos, who established institutions for us, or that we would have a power transition model, or Vitali Glatfelder and Battiston of ETH Zurich, or the Internet, and a means of fighting back. And as for the price of gold, what should the price of gold be? This is what a member of Canada's Committee on Monetary Reform wrote to me. Historically, an ounce of gold was measured by the cost of a fine man's hand-tailored wardrobe, not to be sexist. In old times, this consisted of a fine hand-tailored suit, shirt, tie, shoes, top hat, and top coat. This is commonly known throughout gold circles. Today, if we use the same analogy, using hand tailoring and fine materials, which represents a labor value, a man's hand-tailored suit in the U.S. or U.K. is generally $2,000. Next, today, a well-handmade shirt is $200, a tie is $100, and good handmade shoes are $400. A top coat is $1,200, and a hat $200. That totals $4,100. Call it $4,000. Now, I'm not saying that the price of an ounce of gold should be $4,000, but I have asked UNCTAD to calculate the price of gold for us using a basket of goods and a basket of currencies. Things are heating up as my whistleblowing about the corruption in the international financial system is starting to come into view. This morning, Donald Trump tried to defend himself by mounting an attack in Twitter. I already showed how Twitter was just working for the banking cartel. I'm giving you screenshots. I'm including old correspondence to show you the cover-up of corruption at the center of the world's financial system. I also am showing you a tweet from April 2016 at the end of the teleprompter. As I explained earlier, this is to help us diagnose just how corrupt things are. I've been rereading how people are responding to the banking cartel's lies. They're resisting admitting just how corrupt everything is. So the first best thing that people can do to help is to keep an open mind. And then I'm going to show you some correspondence that I had with Gerald Celente back in 2013. And I was talking about a sting operation in the Bretton Woods institutions. And Bretton Woods, that's another name for World Bank and IMF. And Alex Silberman, who was Celente's editor, wrote, "Hello, Karen. My apologies for the delay in not getting back to you. Our executive editor, Alex Silberman, responded to my query with the following. If you have any other suggestions, please let me know." And this was an email that Gerald Celente had sent to me. And Alex Silberman wrote to Celente on the 26th of November 2013. Ray, sting operation in Bretton Woods institutions. I did get back to Karen. Perhaps my note went to junk mail. Please forward or include this from a Trends Institute mailbox. Dear Karen, thank you for giving us the opportunity to look at your Bretton Woods Institution's article. Interesting and revelatory as it is, our new format does not yet accommodate articles of this length and complexity. Do keep us posted. So, in other words, Salente didn't want to print my article in his Trends journal. So I just went and posted it on the internet, and I'm going to read it to you now. And Salente said to me, "Did you get back to her?" Well, they were just putting me off, obviously. And I wrote to Gerald, "Please let me know if you have any plans to use the draft article that I prepared for Trends Journal, or if I can get it published elsewhere." Well, I'm publishing it now. Okay, and I wrote to Gerald. I'm just showing you how Gerald and I were in communication with each other, which he never bothered to tell you about. Gerald, here's the draft article, either for Trends Journal if I haven't missed your deadline, or for your website if I have. Feel free to edit it as it makes sense. I very much enjoyed your lovely book about what Zizi gave Honeyboy. By the way, that's a stupid book. I'm going to be in Manhattan today and can be reached by cell phone. Well, we were all friends until Gerald decided to do the cover-up. And I wrote, I've devoted 3 decades to exposing corruption in the world's financial system. I worked at the World Bank's legal department for 21 years and was appointed to a board task force on reform of the World Bank. I reported a cover-up of corruption up the corporate ladder to the World Bank's Audit Committee, to the U.S. Treasury Department, to the U.S. Congress, and then to 188 member countries of the Bretton Woods institutions. Occupy Wall Street says Eudice's story is easily the most interesting compared to major financial scandals, surveillance, etc. The American public, indeed the whole world, would unify with an understanding of a rigged world for a few. Predictions of either a crash up in the equity markets or a massive haircut of bank depositors are incorrect. A power transition model developed in the Department of Defense outperforms intelligence analysts, hands down, and is now predicting rule of law in the international financial system. This is after I and other World Bank whistleblowers testified in the European Union and UK parliaments about corruption in the Bretton Woods institutions and the rest of the international financial system. According to the power transition model, the U.S. must continue to ally itself with the European Union and try to include Russia into the coalition. Unilateral action by the U.S., whether in Iraq, Syria, or unwelcome surveillance of its allies, undermines the Western alliance and accelerates the Asian challenge. The Bank for International Settlements is the oldest international financial organization. It was established by the central banks of Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the U.S. in 1930 to manage Germany's reparation payments following World War I. Now consisting of the central banks of 60 countries, the Bank for International Settlements focuses on 2 main goals: international monetary and financial cooperation and monetary and financial stability. The World Bank and International Monetary Fund share the same board of governors from 189 member countries. The initial purpose of the World Bank was to finance the reconstruction of war-torn Europe. After this was accomplished, the World Bank became the primary financer of development projects. The purpose of the International Monetary Fund was to allocate access to international currency reserves within the system of par values. Actually, they weren't telling you what the real purpose of the World Bank and IMF was, and that was to be in charge of the world's wealth, which was deposited by José Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos, and it was going to come out of hiding after 50 years. And the reason for the 50 years was because any claims that people had over those assets would be extinguished under the Roman concept of statute of limitations. And I'm being told now that I've got 3 minutes left, and rather than just read you from the article called Sting Operation in Bretton Woods that I prepared for Gerald Celente, I'll allow you to read that yourself in the teleprompter. I think it's probably a better use of our time for us just to communicate. The important thing that I want to tell you is that the documentation that I make available to you, some of it's frankly boring, but it's very important because it's showing you that the entire power structure of the world's international financial system has been proven as corrupt. I've gone up the system. I've written to the Postmaster General. I've documented all of the corruption. And as for the assets in the global debt facility, the important assets are the debt that was issued at the end of World War in the 1930s. They're called Treaty of Versailles bonds, and they were in the trillions of dollars, but because of the interest that was compounding, it's now worth over $2 quadrillion. So the fact of the matter is there is no more country debt because the debt of the bankers, these bonds were issued by the Federal Reserve. That's the Banking Cartel. The Banking Cartel is bankrupt, and we are winding them down. And they're refusing to admit it. Whenever these documents were presented to them, they would either kill the person who tried to present them or imprison them, just simply because they thought it was inconvenient. They didn't expect that we were all going to expose what this debt was. And what I have done is I've taken this debt and I've recorded it with all of the states where the Federal Reserve banks are located. So we have liens on the assets of all of the banking cartel. And they're refusing to admit what we've done. And we're just simply going to stay put until they do admit it. They have no choice because, what can I say? We're not going to continue to be paying our taxes and our interest payments on country debt because the debt has been offset against what they owe us. And it's really not that complicated. If somebody claims that you owe them money, but they owe you more, then the debt cancels each other. And that's where we are. Thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. We've discussed in today's segment how the world's wealth in the global debt facility that was held secret inside the World Bank and International Monetary Fund for over 50 years is coming out in a global currency reset to replace paper currencies for currencies out of gold. We've been talking about how you all can help make sure that this happens. The first thing is to keep an open mind. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis.